How's it going, everybody? It is Tuesday, June 3rd, and you are listening to another episode of Tide Pod, the official podcast of Tide Illustrated. We finally made it to June, Tony. It's the NBA draft month. We have a lot to talk about today, obviously, but first and foremost, how you doing?
Yeah, it's NBA draft month, but it's not the NBA draft player that we thought we were going to talk about. It's just exciting news with Labaron Philon coming back. It seems like we're working our way to the summer. We needed a little bit of a hit of excitement. It can get kind of dry, and then the unexpected return of Labaron Philon was what we'll be talking about today. I think it was just a nice little boost in the middle of the summer. So. For sure.
Yeah, Labaron Philon withdrawing his name from the NBA draft. I'll backtrack a little bit for those who weren't following it completely, but players had till 11:59 p.m. on May 28th to withdraw their name from the NBA draft. I was looking at that number. It's kind of like a school assignment almost. Like you have until 11:59 on this day to submit your name to the draft. And we saw a lot of top NBA prospects, or not necessarily top, but a lot of borderline first and second round guys bring their name back to college. Yaxel Lundenberg, the transfer from UAB, going to Michigan next year. Tahad Pettiford from Auburn, Alex Condon from Florida, all kind of guys on the bubble of the first round and second round announced that they're going to be returning to school. Kind of looked like it was a little bit disappointing for Alabama fans in terms of Philon, as he was kind of the lone wolf of guys who were staying in the draft. For those who don't know, he was on that borderline, like I've been saying. I think no ceilings. They had him number 26 on their latest big board before the deadline. And then at 11:31 on May 28th, just around 30 minutes until the deadline hit, Yay Alabama, Alabama's NIL collective, tweets out a post announcing Philon's intent to return to school. And it was dramatic. I know for a fact I was in the gym. I wasn't ready for a big news break at 11:30 at night. I immediately texted Tony like, "Whoa, did you just see that?" Tony, where were you when that news broke, and what was your reaction?
I was in bed. I didn't know that you were getting a 11:30 lift in. Kind of makes us look bad here, but no, I was I was in bed. I saw it, and I instantly wrote something up. I had deleted the draft we had of him coming back. We had a draft written up of him coming back, and I had already deleted it because we had already written that he wasn't going to come back. He had told people that he wasn't going to come back, and so I just wrote something up really quick. I feel like I've written about Labaron Philon like 70 times this offseason, so it wasn't tough, but it was surprising, and it's huge for Alabama basketball. I mean, I just think it's such a, we can kind of get into this more in depth, but I think it kind of puts them maybe middle of the pack SEC to, contenders for the SEC. I think they're probably, they don't necessarily have the super team that they did last year. It's not that far off, but it's not quite that super team. But I think it could have the same results as last year's team. I think we're looking at maybe a 2 or a 3 seed, and that's pretty good. I mean, and you never know. I mean, this team probably has a little bit less pressure than that team had coming off of a Final Four. So maybe this team overachieves where that team kind of underachieved at times. So we'll see. It's going to be a fun team to watch. And I know that we talked to Nate Oates, and I get the argument that you don't need necessarily a true point guard. Yeah, it's still nice to have one. It's still nice to have now too. I think Labaron and his distributing, you saw the way he was distributing the ball late in the season. He really took a step up. He needs to get his shooting more consistent from deep, and I think that's probably his biggest focus this year. I think that's what sets him from what you said, 25 overall pick, 27, whatever. I think that probably gets him into the lottery if he can shoot more consistently, because he can do everything else. I really think this was a good investment move for Labaron, and I don't know how much he's making NIL, but I'm assuming it's a pretty penny over there. And, if that can kind of compensate him, I think that he has a chance to make a lot of money as a lottery pick. I think he can really improve his game. He's a guy that has all the, tools in his bag, if you will. He's got to get a little bit more consistent as a shooter. I mean, we've seen the steal against Auburn. We've seen several things. He's a really good defensive player. He can drive to the lane. He can shoot. He can definitely pass. He's going to be a great point guard. I think it's a huge move I think he'll easily be Alabama's best player next year.
Yeah, it was a huge move, but it was a complete 180 from what we were hearing. Like you mentioned, you deleted the story. Philon actually told reporters at the NBA Draft Combine just 2 weeks before the deadline that there's no chance that he was returning to school. I believe I forget whether it was him who said this or it was a report that uh, Nate Oates texted him saying like, "Are you set on not going back to Alabama? Are you set on that draft?" And he said, "I'm set." So nobody really expected this to come out. I know my initial reaction was, like I kind of said earlier, is that the guard play in the SEC is going to be so fun to watch next year. I mean, you have Tahad Pettiford coming back to Auburn. You have Boogie Flan transferring from Arkansas to Florida. You have Otega Owe, another guy going back to Kentucky. He was supposed to go to the draft. And now you have Labaron coming back. I mean, I'm super excited to watch these guards face off in the SEC next year. The SEC had one of the strongest seasons ever out of any conference last year, and this guard play is going to be crazy to watch. But I want to get into some of the stuff you mentioned just now. So we're not sure exactly the reasoning why LeBaron decided to return back to school. There's could be a lot of factors at play here. Tony, do you think this was mostly an NIL-driven decision, or do you think it was more of a decision based on that he's trying to improve his stock and get back to the league next year? I mean, I think it can be a mix of both, though. What do you think on that front?
I think it could be a mix of both. I wouldn't be totally shocked if maybe a late push from a booster gave that extra bit of money that kind of made it make a little bit more sense. But I've always said it depended on how much LeBaron just didn't want to go to school, because the best answer for his future was to come back and develop another year. He wasn't ready necessarily for the NBA. I think he would have been drafted even at 25. You're drafting him for his potential. He's not ready to make a difference in the league. So I think the best. I'm not just saying this for Alabama or for Alabama fans. It's better for him, I think, if he was going to come back and develop his game and then possibly be that lottery pick. But I mean, if you just really hate school, you just really want to be a professional, like that's where I thought maybe this guy just doesn't want to be in school anymore. He just wants to he's been dreaming about this forever. Like maybe he just wants to take it regardless. So I think it could be, I don't know if there was a late NIL push that made it a little bit school sound a little bit more tolerable. And I don't even know for certain like what LeBaron feels about school. I'm just saying he obviously wants to be a pro. He's been dreaming about it since he's a little kid, and it's hard to turn down that opportunity. And the money he would have made at 25 is still a lot of money, So, I mean, not compared to necessarily what he could make, but just compared to like, you and me, right? So it's not like, I think that, it's probably a little bit of both, and that like you get that little bit more money, and then you kind of like come back to your senses and realize that, I do need to develop my game a little bit more. Let me do that here. Let me do that, and let me be a certified lottery pick next year.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the NBA rookie wage scale, if you're selected with the 26th pick, you're making around $2.5 million, which, I mean, obviously no one's complaining about that, but I'm assuming LeBaron wouldn't have returned to school if he's not making north of that. So, I mean,
don't know. I could see him making that's where I'm a little bit, you look at it and like, Cliff Amore made like $850,000 last year, and people were talking about him being this prize. Alabama's never gone to that $2 million range for basketball. I'm not saying that he's not. I don't think he's making north of $2 million. That's just.
I think, it's an interesting thing to look at because we talked a lot about the guards and players in the transfer portal and their price tags, and maybe that's just where Alabama's philosophy comes in. Maybe in all sports, I mean, we've kind of seen this in football too. Like maybe the Crimson Tide's athletic department, they're more willing to give NIL dollars to guys who have already proven themselves at Alabama and guys who, offer them security. I feel like maybe that could be a part of the reason we don't see Alabama go after big names in the portal. I mean, obviously they've been linked to guys, but
I mean,
I don't know. That could be a factor in it.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I think he's getting a lot. I'd be shocked if he wasn't the highest paid player on the team. And I think it's definitely more than what Mark and Cliff made last year. But I think that I don't know, something about it makes me think that he's probably not making north of 2, or if I had to guess, it'd be somewhere maybe around 2. I just don't see Alabama spending that much more on a basketball player.
I mean, it's
maybe I'm wrong.
look
This is not coming from I haven't asked anyone about this. I don't know this for certain, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting to look at. I mean, when you look at a guy at another school like Yaxel Lendenberg for Michigan, I mean, the bag he was getting from Michigan's NIL department or NIL collective was so big that, I mean, it almost made zero sense for him to go to the NBA and take a risk on maybe being a second round pick. I mean, I know his stock was kind of bubbling up a little bit, but the bag he got from Michigan's collective was just too much for him to turn down. I don't know if that was the same for Labaron, but I do agree with you with a lot of the points you made there. I think in today's game in the NBA, if you're a guard entering the league, the most important quality to have in your game is to be able to shoot the basketball. And I think LeBaron checks a lot of boxes for NBA prospect. I think his handle was up there with the guards in this class, his playmaking, his vision, the way he can drive into a lane and then decelerate and shake defenders off of him and find players. I watched a lot of his film over the past few months just to get a gauge on where he sat as a prospect. And I didn't realize how often him and Cliff Umori connected in the lob game. I mean, all that stuff was super impressive from LeBaron, but shooting is the big thing you need to have. And I think it's not a thing for him where you need I don't think LeBaron necessarily needs to improve his willingness to shoot the ball. Like, I don't think he's scared to shoot or anything. I just think he needs to maybe improve his consistency more. And I think that's something that can boost him into being like a lottery guy next year, which is probably a part of the reason why he came back to school, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, he shot what, 31, is it 31.5 from 3. He was 39 of 124. I think if you can shoot a little bit more, like just get a little bit more shots off and maybe make like 33-34% of those, and it's not that drastic of a change, right? But on more attempts and then to kind of get that average up to 33-34, I think that makes you a lot more serious prospect. It's not that much more. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they're asking him to go from being a 23% shooter to a 35% shooter. You're just wanting him to get that extra little touch from beyond the arc and maybe be a guy that can shoot a little bit more than a little bit more threes than he did. So what was he shooting? Yes, he was only averaging like 3 threes a game. So if he shoots maybe 5 threes a game, or and then he can make if he can go shoot 2 of 5, instead of 1 of 3. I'm not saying every day go 2 of 5, but like I think that that's kind of like what he needs to be doing.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about what this means for LeBaron on a personal scale, but this is huge for Alabama on a broader scale. I know you mentioned Nate Oates' maybe pushback at needing a true point guard, but LeBaron, I mean, flat out coming back to school gives Alabama's backcourt a true point guard. How does this impact the Tide overall, Tony? How does LeBaron returning back to school impact Alabama's outlook for 2025-26?
Look, there's a couple of things, right? If you weren't going to get LeBaron, you're going to have to bring in somebody else. And like anytime you bring in a transfer, I mean, it's college basketball. So yes, there's going to be a ton of transfers. Your roster turnover is going to be big every single year. But anytime you can bring back a person that knows the system, it doesn't have to learn, that's better to me than adding in a new player. And so basically, if LeBaron left, you were going to have to try to find someone that replicated LeBaron. And then that person would have to learn Nate Oates' offense. And it's the same thing I said with Aiden Sherrill, where I thought he was the most important player. It's like, yeah, could you have gotten a big that could have replaced Aiden if he would have transferred? Sure, but like then he has to learn the system, and he's got to learn and I think Aiden Sherrill's like built for the Nate Oates offense, and so I think the familiarity first, it's always going to be key. And then just from a pure point guard position, he's a guy that can be the facilitator. I know you don't need like a John Stockton point guard in Nate Oates' offense, but he is somebody that's done it in Nate Oates' offense. He knows how to distribute the ball. Like I said, if he can get that shooting up, he can be that perfect guard. And for me, it means that you don't have to put this over-reliance on Aiden Holloway, somebody who didn't start a single game last year. I think and this is something we were arguing a little bit about before the pod. I think Aiden Holloway gets starter minutes, but I don't think you start him. I like the idea of playing Aiden off the bench. It's something he can do. He's not the biggest guy, so you kind of want to manage, his usage in the SEC. I think you're going to gradually get that up a little bit because you're expecting him to become a star. But I think without Labaron, you start relying a little bit too much on Aiden Holloway, and it's not like he couldn't answer that call from a talent standpoint, but he's just not a big dude. And we saw injuries, and like what happens when Aiden Holloway gets hurt and you don't have a LeBaron? I know that it would have brought somebody else in, but you start losing those facilitators, and it could get kind of messy. I think now you got that necessary depth, and you've got other guys. I mean, like, look, I think this is kind of like if anybody lost out on this deal, it might be Houston Millette, who I thought was going to have a lot bigger of a role. Maybe even playing a little bit of point if they had to kind of get fancy with point guards. And I think now you've got, LeBaron kind of coming in. He's going to take more minutes. I think Houston Millette will still get some action, but I think you might see the court a little bit less now than maybe what I would have projected him had they gone elsewhere. But for the most part, I think, I don't know where I'm going here with that, but for the most part, I think that, Alabama's depth, you're not relying on people that can kind of play point guard or can kind of facilitate the ball. You've got guys that that can, that have done it, and it's not putting all that pressure on Aiden Holloway, who is just a smaller dude. Like, he's just a smaller dude.
Yeah, that's where I disagreed with Tony there. I think this gives Holloway even more opportunity to show off his shooting stroke. In my opinion, I think the right starting lineup for Alabama or the best backcourt for Alabama starting would be have Philon as your point guard and Aiden at shooting. I mean, we saw it all. Everybody saw it after Alabama's first game against Auburn. They kind of gave Labaron the keys to the offense. They let him be the main ball handler, the main guy bringing the ball up the court, and it gave Mark Sears a lot more freedom to work off ball and find pockets in the defense and find open shots. And I think that really benefited Labaron, and that really benefited the rest of Alabama's offensive approach. And I think you can kind of do the same thing now with Philon and Holloway. I mean, Holloway was one of the top shooters in the SEC last year, and having a guy like Philon who's as strong as a contributor as he is amazing for Holloway.
What are you doing with the rest of that lineup, though? Like, so you've got Holloway and Philon. Like, how are you filling out? Like, who's your third guard? Are you going forward, three forwards?
I would go. I would go Reitzel at the 3, then I would go Bull-Bone at the 4, and you have Sherelle at the 5.
See, I think maybe that's like what you would go with if you're like, I get the whole like if LeBaron's not going to be a 3-point shooter, do you want to have 2 lights out 3-point shooters on the court to compensate? And so then you're bringing in Reitzel and Holloway, and that's pretty deadly. I just like having one of those guys off the bench. I think if you would have said like play Reitzel off the bench, I would have maybe bought the Holloway in the starting lineup. If that's what and Reitzel's coming off an Achilles, so maybe it makes sense to play Reitzel off the bench. And if that's the case, I'm okay with starting Holloway if you're managing Reitzel's minutes. But the thing I'm thinking is like, look, Jaleel Bethea's numbers aren't like great from 3 last year, but he was playing on that like garbage Miami team. I think he's going to be drastically improved from what he's shooting. I'm looking at it right now. He shot 32.6. I could see him being a lot better of a 3-point shooter at Alabama, and so I think he's going to give you a little bit of that what you're looking for, and I think he's a more complete player. I like having him. So I have Labaron Philon, Reitzel, Bethea, Taylor Bull-Bowen, and Aiden Sherelle. That's my starting 5. So basically the only difference we have is Holloway for Bethea. I like having Bethea on the court. I think he gives you a little bit more size than Holloway. And I think, like I said, it gives Holloway that opportunity to kind of come off the bench, it gives you a facilitator off the bench. He's a better facilitator than Bethea is. So I like that. There'll be plenty of times though when Holloway and LeBaron are on the court at the same time. When I say that Holloway is going to be a bench player. He's not going to get like bench minutes. You're going to rotate in and out. So there'll be times when, it's, Holloway, Philon, and Bethea on the court. There'll be times when it's Holloway, Bethea, and, and Reitzel on the court. And maybe you rest Philon. There's different things you can do. Aiden Holloway will get his minutes, is what I'm saying, even if he's not a starter. I just think it makes more sense to play him off the bench.
I mean, from a pure splits perspective, last year, Bethea shot the 3 ball at a 13-16 split. Philon shot it at a 15-21 split. So I still think Labaron's a capable shooter, and I think he obviously needs to develop that consistency a little more. I think that, like we said, that played a big role in his decision to return.
I think you can only look at Bethea's numbers so much. It was such a mess where he was. This is a 5-star kid. I think Bethea is a better player. You look at Bethea's numbers, they're just not. They don't really move. 16 starts, 31 games played. He averaged 7.1, 2.1 rebounds, 1.2 assists. Shot 36.8% from the floor, and then 32.6% from three. Those are not great numbers. I think he's a much better player than that. I think you're going to see him take a huge step in this offense. And you can only go so much on the numbers. I guess a lot of this too is I view Jalil Bethea as a starting caliber player and Aiden Holloway as a starting caliber player. And so that's why I'm a lot more comfortable keeping Holloway off the bench. It's not even putting him off the bench. There's no demotion here. It's really, you're just keeping him in a role that he did really well at last year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a difference in philosophy between me and Tony. I mean, I would be happy if they had Holloway off the bench. I think he would be a scoring burst for your second unit. But I would be more comfortable, at least to begin the season, giving Holloway the chance to earn his minutes as a starter. I mean, he proved himself last year.
Yeah, I'm definitely limiting Reitzel early in the season. That guy's gotten hurt so much. Until conference play, I'm kind of handling Reitzel in bubble wrap. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna take too many chances. So that's what I'm saying. This might be a moot point because I'm limiting a lot of what I'm easing Latrell Reitzel back onto the court as much as I can. So really, maybe I could that's what I said from the start. You could sell me on putting Reitzel off the bench and going Philon, Holloway, and Bethea.
That would make a lot of sense in Nate Oates' system.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Nate Oates is going to turn down having the best shooters on the floor he possibly can. And obviously, having Labaron as your guard you're not going to have the best shooters that you have on your roster on the floor. But I mean, I think that would be fun to at least experiment with having Bethea and Holloway in the starting lineup at once. If you just want to shoot the crap out of the basketball and try to score 120 points per game. I mean, I would love that. That would be awesome.
The other thing too is are you going to get a much better 3-point shooting from Taylor Boboan than you did from Grant Nelson? And that's
that's another thing.
The thing about Taylor Boboan that I just it's so weird when you look at his stats. His freshman year, he shot 21% from three, and then last year he shot 41% from three. I mean,
he ranked third in conference play, I believe, in 3-point shooting percentage.
I'm telling you right now, in this SEC, he's not shooting 41%. But if he's shooting 35% or 34%, that is significantly better than Grant Nelson, which is what you have to consider. I mean, what you have to consider there is even if he halves what he did last year, if he shoots 40%, I'm definitely saving Holloway because you actually don't need the extra shooting. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. You may have talked me into this lineup, this 3-guard lineup with Bethea and
right because
Holloway. Because even
yeah,
you mentioned TBV, but even Aiden Sherrill is a pretty capable shooter too. I mean, we saw him get his touches and hit some big threes. I feel like if you have a lineup
your bigs than you did last year, where Grant just was. What did Grant shoot last year? It just wasn't great. It was 26 or something.
And I feel like the other issue with Grant is there was a lot of hesitancy. I feel like he didn't have a lot of confidence. There were a lot of times where even if he was more contested than he would like. I think he should have let the shot fly, and he just didn't. He would hesitate.
Well,
I
and he
think
was hurt
TBV is gonna.
too. I mean, a lot of it
Yeah,
the whole season. He shot 25.8 from three. So you're replacing him essentially with somebody that shot 41.4. Now, like once again, I will be absolutely floored, shocked, surprised if Taylor Bull-Bowden shoots 41%. Like if he does that, Alabama's a number one seed. Like with this lineup, if he shoots 41% from three, like Alabama's winning the title. Like it's not going to happen. He's not going to shoot 41% from three. But if like if he shoots 33 or 35, that's 7 percentage points better than Grant Nelson. And that's where like, you can survive with, like, is Bethea going to be as good of a shooter as Reitzel or Holloway? No, but you can survive with having him in for one of those two, because you're going to get the boost from Grant Nelson and you're going to get the boost from Cliff Amore, who was just, you didn't even think about him from three. Aiden Sherrill can spot up and shoot a couple threes, but I still, as much as Aiden Sherrill can shoot the three, I still don't want to see him take a ton of them. I just think he needs to shoot enough that, like, sometimes you'd have Cliff out there and nobody would guard him. I think if Aiden can hit enough that you have to send someone out there a little bit to open up the rest of the defense, that's all he needs to shoot. I don't want Aiden Sherrill shooting too many 3 points for Alabama. Like, it's just, that's not what he's here for.
yeah. I don't know. I just think overall though, it gives Alabama has a lot of versatility with this lineup that they didn't have before with Philon coming back. And I mean, at least compared to last year, I think there's going to be a way bigger threat of 3-point shooting. And I mean, it's not like Alabama was a slouch when it came to shooting the ball last year, but I think overall, like as a cohesive unit, I think Alabama as a shooting team is going to be way more scary. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, and you've got some guys off the bench too. That can be, you're bringing in a solid freshman class. You're bringing in why can't I remember this guy's name? The kid from Tarleton State. That's basically going to be the Jaron Stevenson transfer. Help me out with this. Why am I forgetting this kid's name? Keaton Bristow. He's a guy that I think is going to, he can help out. I'm pulling up what he shot last year. Because he's a guy that can shoot from three a little bit too, if I remember right. Yeah, he shot 32.8% from three. So, I mean, like, he is a guy that can come in and play and maybe, basically do what I think he's kind of like the Jaron. You know what I'm saying? So you've even got, that, you go from 32.8. What did Jaron end up shooting last year? It wasn't as bad as what you probably thought, because Jaron actually kind of turned his numbers around. But, he shot 30.7. So you're getting a small little bump there too as well. Assuming that Bristow can kind of carry over that shooting. I think, yeah, you're right. You might have a better 3-point shooting team, regardless of who you send out on the court.
Yeah. But I want to shift gears here a little bit and go back to what we were talking about a little bit before. We mentioned the NIL stuff at play. We mentioned the fact that it could be he's trying to just improve his stock. But Tony, what do you think it was over these last 2 weeks from when Labaron told Nate Oates that there was no chance he was coming back to Alabama to where May 28th he says he's coming back? Like, do you think he was just kind of using that deadline as leverage to maybe?
I think he actually said like I doubt he went to Nate Oates and said there's no chance I'm coming back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure that conversation went a little bit more like, yeah, I'm all in on the NBA. Like, I think that's where I want to go. Like, I'm going to pretty much pursue it no matter what, And then I think it gets, when you get closer to the draft, if some of those conversations that you had with NBA teams become even a little bit more foggy, even if it's not like to say like everyone told them, oh, you're not going to get picked. If it becomes a little bit less clear and then you get a little boost of the NIL, like I said, a little bit of both. I don't ever think he was as set as like what he made it out to be. I think
I don't know.
Optimism a lot. I think in his heart he just so wanted to go to the NBA draft. And then when he finally let his kind of head win over from his heart, And it was like, oh, well, this, it makes sense to come back, because I definitely think I don't think he had this like sudden urge to like come back and play for Alabama. And that's not me saying that he hates Alabama or doesn't want to play for Alabama. It's like, I think he wanted to be an NBA player really bad. And then he just kind of thought about it and was like, you know what? If this is going to be here next year.
Do you think it could have been a thing from his peers too? Do you think like seeing a guy like Todd Pettiford or Alex Condon going back could have impacted that decision? Maybe like he realized those guys with kind of similar stock.
I think Todd Pettiford, like coming back to Auburn, which we all kind of knew was going to happen, right? But like, I think Todd Pettiford coming back to Auburn might have convinced a booster to throw in a couple $100,000, maybe. Like that could have been a factor. I mean, I don't necessarily think Labaron saw Pettiford. Labaron's a better prospect than Pettiford. I don't think he saw Pettiford coming back and be like, oh, well, if he's coming back, then I'll come back. Yeah, I don't think it worked like that.
I think the thing about Labaron, and I've heard some other people say this, but as I mentioned his strengths as a prospect and his weakness being shooting, but I think if I'm an NBA team, I mean, we can go with your Celtics. I've seen them being a landing spot for him around that range. If you're sitting there at 27 as the Boston Celtics, that's your only first round pick, and you're taking it, and Labaron Philon staring you in the face. Well, are you really comfortable with taking a guy who hasn't proven he can shoot at a highly efficient rate in this day and age of?
I think you are.
I just think that's a big risk,
The Celtics have multiple picks in that range. But like speaking of for them, I think if you're an NBA team, you're looking at Philon and said, we can teach this kid how to shoot. But I think when you look at Philon too, you got to think like, let's use the Celtics. He's not seeing the court next year with the Celtics. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe, I don't know. They're going to have to shed people and like, Tatum's going to be hurt for most of the season. But like, he's not seeing the court. Even then, he's not seeing the court much for the Celtics. He's not seeing the court much for a lot of the teams that pick in that spot, those high-end playoff teams. And that's kind of where he was. But I think those teams definitely think, yeah, we got a lottery talent at 25. Like this guy, I think, they're thinking that like this guy would have been in the lottery if he would have went back to school, and we can teach him how to shoot. It's not like we're teaching him how to be taller or teaching him how to like play defense. Like this guy's shot's going to develop. It's not like he has like, I'm not a huge ball knower in terms of technique and everything, but I don't think Labaron has anything in his shot that would, I think it's just a matter of, developing that consistency. I don't think there's anything that's going to necessarily prevent him from developing a shot. I think NBA teams would have loved to have him just focus on basketball and not have to worry about school. Like, I definitely think there's multiple teams that would have taken a shot at him. It's just not in the top 20.
And maybe that's where some of the returns he got from NBA teams came back. Like, oh, well, we'll take a chance at you at pick 30 or pick 29, but if you stay another year and everything falls your way, you might be a lottery pick. Maybe I
think that's definitely it. Yeah, and I like for his sake, and I mean, I'm rooting for him. We have an Alabama site, but it's not just that. Like, I like it when I hope Pettiford improves himself by coming back. Like, I want to see kids improve themselves by coming back because it's better for the sport that we cover. I would like kids to, instead of developing in the G League, to develop with their schools. And I think that's part of what makes the NIL. That's one of the pros from the NIL is that like these kids can make money and then they don't have to just go to the G League. Look, JD Davison like won G League MVP. He's not going to sniff the court for the Celtics. He's going to have to get traded. So like, just because you're good in the G League, you still might not see the time. And so like, developing in college, it's just for the sport we cover. I'm glad that we're going to get to see. You mentioned a lot of these guards that are coming back. I'm glad we get to see it because it's going to make college basketball better. So, and I hope it pays off for him because I hope down the road, another kid that's talented, whichever school he plays for, is going to see Pettiford and Philon and say like, oh, wow, these guys went from being, end of first round picks to now they're lottery picks, and so maybe it, leads to more players and more talent staying in college for longer, and that'd be fun to watch.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to talk about, you kind of set me up perfectly for that, though. But on a broader scale, less about Labaron or Alabama. Do you think there's kind of a growing trend? I mean, do you think it's ever going to level out to where we have more one and done guys coming into the league, or do you think with NIL and the rookie wage scale being how it is, and just and like the amount of international prospects coming over, and there's a mixture of all those factors. I mean, I'll just make the point with this withdrawal deadline, the late first round, early second round portion of this draft got absolutely gutted. I mean, there are some guys like there is a large number of guys who were supposed to go in that range who left, and now like we're talking about Hanson Yang, the center from China, going top 25 in the draft. Like that was unheard of a month ago. No knock on him as a prospect. It just like all this stuff kind of just bubbled out of nowhere. Do you think this is a growing trend where we're going to see a lot of guys go back to school, or do you think eventually it's going to level itself out and become,
Yeah, I
more?
don't think it's necessarily. It's going to depend player to player, of course, and like a lot of it, it's like what I said, like how much of these kids going to just absolutely want to be a pro, and there's going to be some of these kids where, like JD Davison, I don't think it mattered. Like I think he wanted to be a pro. It didn't matter what they were telling him. Like he was going to go one and done, because or like and you get people like Charles Bediako, but like didn't work out for him, but he just wanted to go, so I do think that there'll be people that leave, but yeah, of course you're going to see more people stay, because before you didn't have the opportunity to make, like, I don't know what Philon's making, but if it is close to 2 million, I mean that's a significant number, right? That's not too far off from what you are making if you get picked 25, and you're going to get that money. It's not like you have to like sit there and cross your fingers that you don't fall in the draft and miss out. Like that's a guaranteed money. I think you are going to get
Yeah,
people that
I
stay
don't
a little
know.
longer.
I just think it's interesting because to the point that I made about maybe LeBaron seeing some of these other guys coming back. I mean, I know for a fact that he was on Twitter and on Instagram seeing these announcements. At the same time, you can say maybe that could have forced him to want to come back more. Oh, that also opens the door for him a little bit when you have less bona fide prospects in that late range,
Sure, yeah.
who are in the class, and maybe it would have been a more of a guarantee for him to go with the 25th pick or something. It's just
I
it was
think so
it
that
was weird.
if you look at like the way Nate Oates has developed NBA play, like players into the NBA, and you trust the system that you're in, Um, I think it's going to help him that he's going to be in his second year of this system, and maybe he improves a lot being in a second. That familiarity, I think, is going to help. You talked about Boogie Flan. He's switching teams. He's learning a new system, whereas LeBaron is not going to have to do that. I'm not going to say that Flan's not going to be good. I'm just saying like that is an advantage that Pettiford and Philon have, is that like they know their systems and they're good at their systems, and maybe that allows them to take that extra. If I'm Philon and I'm developing, I think I've got a really good chance of developing everything in this Nate Oates offense, which is another good thing for him, is he's basically going off of like an NBA like approach here. You know what I'm saying? Like it's it's not like he's going and playing in some weird, slow it down, Anthony Grant, Buzz Williams kind of like weird, college offense. Like he's going in a modern setup, the kind that he's going to be learning in the NBA. So it'd be one thing if Alabama had kind of a gimmicky approach, but they have a very NBA centric, style. I think it's only going to help his game. I think that's one of those advantages that Alabama will have, is like the way Nate Oates plays is the way a lot of people play. A lot of it's modern basketball. It's really not even like, yes, Nate Oates is known for it and he's done a lot and he's a big, he's kind of a, on the extreme side sometimes of it, but it's not like he's just made this up and he's running this weird offense that nobody else runs. Like this is a very popular approach. The Celtics basically do this where, they shoot a lot of threes and they go for threes or layups. Now the Celtics are going to have a little bit more mid-range shots than, Alabama is, but like there are multiple teams that like take this high three approach just off of the math that makes sense. And I think that, being accustomed to that's going to help Labaron Philon, and like people in those like kind of similar offenses and similar, the people that are coming back to coaches that can develop pro players. I think they're going to benefit from the familiarity and the ability to grow their game instead of just constantly being hit with something new. Like they would be if they, went to the next level. They're going to have to learn something new. And I think just having that ability to just kind of like, okay, I know where I'm at. I'm comfortable. Now let me get better. I've reached this plateau. Now let me get better. And I think that's going to be crucial for a lot of kids.
Yeah, but all in all, Labaron Philon returning to Alabama for his sophomore season. I know for me and Tony, at least, we'll have a lot less to watch for on June 25th, the night of the NBA draft.
Yeah, there will not be an Alabama player picked in the draft. I'm not going to go ahead and no offense to Mark Sears or Grant Nelson, but I'm not expecting an Alabama player now to hear their name called. So we're just watching for fun, I think, right at this point.
Hey, that's nice for me. We got the third pick. I'm ready. I wish it could be draft night tonight. Yeah. But appreciate you guys tuning in once again to Tide Pod, and we'll be back next week.